Okay, folks, so I'm going to give the answer to the Flanders Fields assignment because I need people to move forward, and I know there are some confusing parts. So let's take a look at it. Now, we have a folder called Flanders Fields because we have a BlueJ project called Flanders Fields. So remember, when you make a BlueJ project, it creates a folder for you. So if I go into here, these are all the files that I need to run Flanders Fields. You'll notice that one of those is ff.txt. Okay, so all of this code here, from here to here, is meant to take the lines from the text file that sits on the hard drive and import them into our program, and we're going to put them into this array. So I've got an array that's going to hold strings, and a string is a sequence of characters. So basically we're holding sentences, okay? So all lines basically will hold sentences, and it's going to hold 15 of them. Why 15? Because this poem happens to have 15 lines. So this number right here has to match however many lines you have in here. If it's too small, if you were to put a 10, you're going to get an error because you don't have enough space. And if you put a 20, well, now you're going to have empty space, and you can't have either one of those things. So I'm going to put a 15 because it matches the number of lines that I have there. All of this I've covered in the file reader and the file writer, so I'm not going to go over it in depth, but basically what it does is it takes all of the stuff from here and line by line reads one line and puts it into the array, reads the next line and puts it into the array, reads the next line and puts it into the array, and it keeps going in this loop until there's no more lines to read, and then it stops reading in lines. So after this is all done, we have an array called all-lines that contains each line of the poem. And the reason that's important is because now we have each line of the poem in a data structure that we can now examine and look through. So in essence, we've almost taken this text file and we've put each line into a list. So this is like the 0th item of the list, because in computer programming we start at 0. This is the number 1th item of the list, and this is the number 2 item in the list, and the 3 item in the list. And so they're in the list I have in my computer memory called all lines. I have a list that has 15 things, spot 0, spot 14. So what we want to do now is we want to go through all of the lines in the array, and we're going to look and see if we can find the word fields. So the first thing I do, I'm going to comment now, is I'm going to make an integer variable that will count up 1 each time we find the word lines, or sorry, the word fields. Okay, so we say, computer, please make a variable called field counts, and we're going to start it at 0. Now, we are going to, this is a loop, and it runs through all of the all of the spots in the array called all lines. So basically this loop says go through each line and do whatever it is in here. So what is it in here? Well, this line right here says take the xth line, so x starts at 0, but then it's going to go to 1, and then 2, and then 3, and 4, and 5, all the way up to 14. So every time, do the same thing. You're going to take the x line and split that line based on the space. So if you take the 0th example, if we split that, what happens is we're going to wind up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 strings, because we're splitting it based on the space. And so this splits the xth line of all lines into individual words, essentially. And it's important to note that those words are held in a variable called, fittingly, words. So we're going to split the line. We're going to blow it up. It's going to wind up with 6 different words. And we're going to hold those words in another string array called words. So now we want to go through that array and go, okay, well, in, is that fields? No, it's not. Flanders, is that fields? No, it's not. Fields, oh, that's fields. So we found one. So essentially we split the sentence into words, and now we have another loop, and this loop runs through the individual words in each line. And in more computer speak, it goes through each spot of the words array. So there's an array called words that holds 6 different strings, okay, 6 different words, and this loop right here, from here to here, this says go through each of those words and do this. And this if statement says if the yth, because y is the variable that goes through each word, if the yth word contains fields, so if we find fields, then right here, then we add 1 to the counter. Now if you're wondering why contains, that's so we can count things like this. Because if we get the word fields with a period, we still count that. That means we found it. So we want to use the word contains, so we still get a case like that, or if we had one with a comma, or stuff like that. Okay? And if you're wondering why we didn't just do contains on the whole sentence, we want to make sure that we get each individual word. For example, if we did a contains on that sentence right there, looking for the word row, we would only find it once, but you can see here that actually contains 2 rows. So we would have to look at each individual word. Okay, so we add 1 to the counter every time we find a word. If we don't find fields, we just don't do anything. We don't add anything to the counter. And then ultimately, when we get done, so once we're done going through all of the words of all of the sentences, we say report, this reports the number of times that fields was found. Okay, so the reason you need 2 loops is because one loop goes through all the sentences, but the second loop goes through all of the individual words, looking for the word fields. Okay, I hope that helps. And now you should be able to write code that would go through any text file and look for any word, because all you would have to do is change that if you're looking for a different word, and if you have a different text file, you would just change that, and maybe that, depending on how many lines. All right.